You have been domesticated. From the moment they placed a pencil in your hand and told you not to color outside the lines, the system trained you to be an employee, not a master. Civilization convinced your mind that intelligence is something bought in installments, acquired in institutions with Latin names, and proven with a piece of paper hanging on a wall. But the brutal truth, the one that makes you toss and turn at 3 a.m. feeling like a fraud, is that your diploma did not prepare you for the war of real life. Most people spend, on average, 18 years sitting in uncomfortable chairs, listening to someone talk about how the world works. They accumulate theories. They memorize dates. They learn to obey the bell, ask for permission to speak, and seek approval from an external authority. And then, when they are thrown into the chaos of the market, complex relationships, or the search for purpose, they freeze. They have the map, but they don't know how to navigate the territory. Musashi never stepped foot in a classroom. He didn't have teachers giving him grades for behavior, nor a curriculum approved by the Ministry of Education. At 13, he won his first duel of life or death. By 30, he had survived over 60 combats, founded schools, mastered painting, calligraphy, and philosophy. He became the greatest swordsman in Japanese history and one of the greatest strategists the world has ever seen. And he did it alone. The question that should be bothering you right now isn't how did he do it, but what have they done to my mind? Why, with all the access to information you have today, entire libraries in your pocket, Harvard courses a click away, infinite tutorials, do you still feel stagnant? Why do you consume 10 hours of productivity content and continue to procrastinate? Why do you read 3 books on Stoicism, yet lose your mind the first time someone cuts you off in traffic? The answer is simple and painful. You learned to study like a sheep, while Musashi learned like a wolf. There is an abysmal difference between academic learning and what I call wild learning. The academic model is safe, sterilized, and theoretical. It's like learning about lions by visiting a zoo. You see the animal behind the glass, read the information plaque, note the characteristics, and go home to eat ice cream. Wild learning is waking up in the middle of the savannah at night without weapons, hearing the predator's breath on your neck. One gives you knowledge, the other gives you instinct. You suffer from intellectual obesity. You consume information but do not metabolize it. Your mind is swollen with useless data, success, hacks, and motivational quotes, but your mental muscles are atrophied. Musashi didn't have the luxury of theory. If he learned something wrong, he didn't get a bad grade. He died. This urgency, this visceral connection with reality, is what is missing from your life. We have created a generation of theorists of their own existence. People who know everything about how to build a business but have never sold anything. People who discuss the philosophy of love but are incapable of maintaining a healthy relationship. People who debate politics all day but cannot govern their own impulses. If you are tired of being a spectator of your own life, accumulating certificates that do not guarantee competence, you are in the right place. This channel is not entertainment. Kokoro is a digital dojo. Here, we don't pat you on the head, we sharpen your mind. If you are willing to stop being a passive student to become a Ronin in search of practical wisdom, subscribe now. Make this silent commitment to yourself. It's not about the algorithm, it's about being part of a minority that chose truth over comfort. What Musashi discovered, and what Harvard cannot teach, is that true mastery does not come from accumulation, but from subtraction. It is not about adding more books to the shelf, but about removing the illusions that prevent you from seeing reality as it is. Wild learning is not a memorization technique. It is a posture in the face of chaos. But be warned, the path we are about to explore requires you to destroy the pedestal where you placed your academic idols. You will need to admit that your education was largely a process of domestication to make you harmless. Musashi was dangerous because he was free, and the freedom to learn directly from the source, without intermediaries, is the most frightening power a human being can have. Do you feel that discomfort? That sensation that something fundamental was stolen from you during your formative years? Hold on to that feeling. Do not push it to the back of your mind. It is this discomfort that will serve as fuel for what comes next, because understanding that you were deceived is the first step. The second is understanding the biology behind this deception and why your brain prefers the comfortable lie of the classroom to the brutal truth of experience. It is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. The reason you prefer the comfort of theory to the brutality of practice is not just cultural, it is biological. Your brain is a machine designed to save energy, not to seek the truth. In nature, wasting calories for no reason meant death. The unknown represented danger. That is why we evolved to love patterns, predictability, and safety. The traditional classroom is the McDonald's of neuroscience. It delivers to your brain exactly what it craves, a controlled environment with ready-made answers and predictable rewards. When you watch an explainer video or read a self-help book, your brain releases dopamine. It feels like you have achieved something. You have the sensation of progress. But it is a neurochemical lie. You are merely drugging yourself with the illusion of competence. This is where the fatal flaw of the Western model comes in, something Musashi instinctively rejected. We live under the shadow of a philosophical error that has lasted for centuries: the separation of mind and body. You were told that learning happens from the neck up, that if you intellectually understand the concept, the work is done. This created a legion of people who can explain the mechanics of swimming but would drown in a pool 3 feet deep. For Musashi, and for the Eastern tradition of which he was a rebellious part, there is no knowing without being. Knowledge that does not descend into the bone marrow, that does not become muscle memory, is merely rumor. Musashi called this the way. Do. The way is not something you study, it is something you walk. The deep problem is that you were trained to dissociate action from immediate consequence. In school, if you make a mistake, you receive a red mark on a paper days later. The feedback is abstract, delayed, and physically painless. In Musashi's wild learning, feedback is immediate and visceral. If he missed the angle of a block by millimeters, he bled. If he hesitated, he died. This lack of skin in the game, as Nassim Taleb would say, has atrophied your internal navigation system. You have lost the ability to feel reality. You outsourced the judgment of your worth to teachers, bosses, and algorithms. You need someone to tell you good job, to feel that you have learned. Musashi had no one to congratulate him. Survival was the only valid certificate. Furthermore, there is a perverse psychological bias called the illusion of fluency. When we consume content passively, everything seems obvious and easy. The teacher solves the equation on the board, and you nod. The speaker talks about discipline, and you shake your head in agreement. It seems fluid. But the moment you try to do it alone, the fluency disappears and panic sets in. You confuse the mentor's clarity with your own capability. Musashi never fell into this trap because he didn't have mentors in the traditional sense. He observed nature. He observed carpenters building temples. He observed the flow of water. He understood that the principles of strategy were not in sacred scrolls, but hidden in the physics of the real world. He said, "If you know the way broadly, you will see it in all things." This means he used the whole world as his classroom. He didn't separate study time from living time. Everything was training. You, on the other hand, fragment your life. You study English twice a week and expect to learn. You train, focus for 30 minutes a day. This compartmentalization is the root of your failure. Real learning is omnipresent, chaotic, and respects no schedule. As long as you continue treating knowledge as a collection of stickers to paste into your mental album, you will remain fragile. The real world doesn't care about what you memorized. It cares about what you can execute under pressure when you are tired, afraid, and without instructions. The silent tragedy is that, by avoiding the pain of practical learning, you are building a prison of insecurity. The more you study without applying, the wider the abyss becomes between who you think you are and who you really are. and this abyss, sooner or later, will swallow you. If we continue on this safe and anesthetized path, the cost will not just be professional mediocrity. The cost will be the total loss of your autonomy as a human being. And it is exactly about this terrible cost that we need to talk now. Because if you think just not succeeding is the worst that can happen, you haven't understood anything. The hole is much deeper. The cost of your domestication is not just failure, it is irrelevance. And in the world we are building, irrelevance is a death sentence while still alive. What you need to understand with visceral urgency is that the model of the world for which you were educated has ceased to exist. That safe treadmill, where you entered with a diploma at one end and exited with a golden retirement at the other, has broken, and no one is coming to fix it. Musashi lived in the Sengoku period, the era of the warring states. It was pure chaos. Clans rose and fell overnight. Titles of nobility did not stop arrows. No one cared who your master was, unless your master had taught you how to survive. We are living in a new Sengoku period today, but the weapons are digital, and the battles are for attention and adaptive competence. Here's the terrifying data. School trained you to be a flesh and blood robot. You were taught to memorize, to repeat patterns, to follow logical algorithms, and to perform repetitive tasks with precision. It turns out that we have just created machines that do all of this infinitely better, faster, and cheaper than you. If your competitive advantage is your accumulated knowledge or your ability to follow instructions, you are obsolete. Musashi's wild learning was not an aesthetic choice. It was the only way not to be eliminated. He understood that in real combat, the enemy never attacks as they do in training. The enemy improvises. Chaos has no script. If you only know how to fight when the opponent follows the rules of the dojo, you die at the first unforeseen movement. Do you feel that modern anxiety that permeates everything? That burnout that seems to have no cure? This is not just tiredness. It is the sound of your mental operating system grinding, trying to run 1950s software in a 2025 reality. You are exhausted because you are trying to apply rigid maps to a territory that changes shape every second. You are trying to memorize the ocean instead of learning to swim. If you do not adopt Musashi's posture now, the scenario for the coming years is grim. You will become a bureaucrat of your own existence, someone who collects diplomas to hide their own insecurity. You will see younger people with fewer resources but more hunger and wild instinct overtake you at record speed. They won't ask for permission. They won't wait for the official course. They will learn by doing, breaking, and fixing, while you are still reading the preface of the theory book. The biggest lie they told you is that error is the opposite of success. For the school mindset, to err is to be punished. For wild learning, error is data. It is the necessary information for adjustment. Musashi didn't win because he was perfect. He won because he was adaptable. He fought with one sword, with two, with a wooden oar, with the sunlight blinding his opponent. He used the environment. He didn't have a style. His style was winning. The cost of inaction is becoming a passive spectator, while the world is inherited by aggressive autodidacts. It is reaching 40 or 50 years old, full of unrealized potential, bitter, blaming the economy, politics, or luck, when in truth the problem was your refusal to let go of the teacher's hand and enter the forest alone. Fragility is the cancer of the modern soul. We have created a society of people who break at the slightest sign of pressure because they never strengthened their spiritual bones in the impact of reality. If you continue to avoid the discomfort of real learning, you will be swept away, not for lack of intelligence, but for lack of temper. The real danger is not you trying Musashi's method and failing. The real danger is you succeeding in the old model. It is you being the best student in the class, the best obedient employee, and waking up one day to discover that the factory has closed and you don't know how to hunt your own food. But admitting this hurts. It requires killing the good student that exists inside you. And that good student will fight to survive. He will scream, he will rationalize, and he will beg to go back to the comfort of textbooks. This is where the internal war begins. It is not against the world, it is against your own programming. And the escalation of this conflict is what defines whether you will be a master or just another footnote. Now begins the ugly part. The part no one puts on Instagram. You understood the shock, saw the context, and felt the fear of irrelevance. So, you decide to act. You decide you will adopt Musashi's way. You promise yourself that tomorrow will be different. But when morning comes, you freeze. The resistance you feel now is not laziness. It is a brutal and sophisticated defense mechanism. The good student, inside you, the one conditioned for decades to seek the gold star on the forehead, is fighting for its life. It panics in the face of the absence of a teacher. Without anyone to tell you what to do, you feel naked. The silence of autonomy is deafening to those who have spent a life listening to orders. This is the civil war happening in your brain. On one side, the wild desire for real growth. On the other, the addiction to external approval. And make no mistake, you are an addict. You are addicted to the feeling of safety the traditional method offers. Leaving this system to learn alone, in practice, generates real withdrawal symptoms. Anxiety, doubt, the imposter syndrome screaming that you are not qualified enough to teach yourself. Musashi faced this, but in a much more visceral form. When he challenged the Yoshioka school, he wasn't just fighting 70 men. He was fighting tradition, the status quo of martial arts of the time. He was a pariah. He lived dirty, without bathing, focused only on the essence of the cut. He gave up vanity to gain efficiency. And here is your biggest block, your intellectual vanity. You want to learn, but you don't want to look stupid in the process. The school method protects your ego. You study in silence and only appear when you know. Wild learning demands that you expose yourself to error publicly. It demands that you try to speak the language and stutter. It demands that you launch the imperfect project. It demands that you fight ugly before you fight beautifully. But your ego cannot stand being a beginner. You prefer to do nothing than to do something poorly. And this search for theoretical perfection is the chain that binds you to the bottom of the well. You hoard tutorials, download PDFs, organize folders on your computer. All of this is mental masturbation. You feel like you are doing something, but you are just procrastinating with sophistication. It is the simulation of work, not the work itself. Musashi spent winters in caves, not to hide, but to remove the noise. He called this Shugyo austere training. For him, comfort was a deadly distraction. For you, comfort is the goal. As long as you seek the easy path, the hacked path, the shortcut, you will remain easy prey. Wild learning hurts. It demands that you look your incompetence in the eye, without filters. You reach the edge of the abyss. You look down and see the chaos of real practice. It is terrifying. Your instinct screams. Go back to the course. Go back to theory. It's safe there. Most people retreat here. They buy one more book and return to the bleachers of life. They choose to be movie critics instead of filmmakers, soccer commentators instead of players. It is safer to criticize those who do than to risk doing and failing. The tension now is unbearable. You know that if you don't jump, you will die suffocated by your own unrealized potential. But jumping feels like suicide. How to take this leap without shattering into pieces? How, in practice, does a modern human being, full of bills to pay and social pressures, apply the philosophy of a homeless samurai from the 17th century without becoming a lunatic? You need a method, not a school curriculum, but a code of conduct, a way to structure chaos without it killing you. Musashi left clues. He didn't just leave the history of his victories. He left the Go-Rin no-sho, the Book of 5 Rings, not as a religious manual, but as a guide of flexible principles. The good news is you don't need to live in a cave, but you need to transform your life into a dojo. You need to stop consuming and start metabolizing. There is a way to flip this switch, to kill the good student and give birth to the master. And this doesn't require more time. It requires a radical shift in perception. If you are feeling this fear mixed with excitement, good. It is the sign that your soul is waking up. Comfort is over. Now, let's rebuild your mind with the right tools. Let's translate Musashi's sword to the pen, the keyboard, and daily life. It is time for resolution. The solution is not to burn your diplomas, but to stop using them as a shield. Musashi's method for mastering reality can be translated to the 21st century into 3 principles that you can and must apply as soon as this video ends. They are the antithesis of the school model. The first principle is unfiltered observation. In school, they tell you where to look. The teacher points to the board. Musashi looked at the whole. He said, "Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye." This means stopping the consumption of chewed-up content and starting to observe the raw patterns of reality. Want to learn about sales? Stop reading theoretical marketing books and go to a street market to watch a vendor convincing a housewife. Want to learn about leadership? Observe who people follow in a crisis, not who has the manager title. Reality is the supreme textbook, but it only speaks to those who take off the headphones of theory. The second principle is immediate, imperfect action. The academic system taught you to prepare, and only then act. Wild learning inverts this. You act to prepare. Musashi didn't wait to be ready for the duel. The duel was the preparation. If you want to write, publish your bad text today. If you want to build a business, sell something trivial today. Competence is forged in the fire of shame and error, not in the air conditioning of the classroom. Adopt the 70% rule. If you have 70% of the necessary information and 70% certainty, move. The rest you learn on the way. Waiting for absolute certainty is just fear disguised as prudence. The third principle, and perhaps the deepest, is the way of all things. Musashi said that upon understanding the way of strategy, there is nothing you cannot comprehend. He used carpentry lessons to improve his swordsmanship. He used calligraphy to sharpen his reaction time. For wild learning, there are no separate disciplines. Everything is connected. The discipline you use in the gym is the same you use to study finance. The patience you have with your children is the same you use to negotiate a contract. Stop fragmenting your life. You are a single entity. Everything you do trains everything you are. Upon adopting this posture, something changes in your brain chemistry. The anxiety of imposter syndrome disappears because you are no longer pretending to be a master. You are assuming the role of an eternal aggressive apprentice. You stop seeking validation from external authorities because validation comes from the result of your action. Did the sword cut or did it not cut? Did the project work or did it not work? The truth is binary and brutal, and that is liberating. The world is desperate for people like this. We are drowning in theorists, stage experts, and parrots of bureaucracy. The market, art, and society cry out for modern Ronin men and women who do not need a master to tell them what to do, who solve complex problems with autonomy, and who possess the wisdom of skin in the game. You have been domesticated, yes, but the cage door has always been open. School is out. The final exam has no scheduled date. It happens every morning when you wake up. No one gives you a grade. The prize is your freedom and your real competence. Musashi died undefeated not because he was a god, but because he never stopped learning with the ferocity of someone who knows death is lurking. He turned survival into art. Now it is your turn. Transform your routine into your dojo. Not tomorrow. Now, if you have made it this far, you are part of an absolute minority. The majority gave up in the second chapter, looking for a cat video or a magic pill. You stayed. You endured the hard truth. This proves there is something in you that refuses domestication. I want to know who the survivors of this video are. Go down to the comments now and write just 3 words. I am Ronin. This will be our password. The signal that you understood that you do not need a master, only discipline and observation. Do not explain, do not justify, just declare, I am Ronin. Let others not understand. We will understand. The path is before you. Drop the books, pick up your sword, be it a pen, a code, or a hammer, and go learn.